Hi.
Right.
I've only decided tonight to do this, and I'm doing it because it's been suggested by several people that it may be important to personally testify to my intent on October 25th, 2012. So to get it on the record officially, I went to the Hancock Field Air National Guard Base to fulfill my obligations as a citizen of the United States, to call attention to the fact that my government is breaking the law by committing war crimes. I have no delusions about the likelihood that my presence would deter the commission of those crimes. To do that, I would probably have to climb the fence and risk being shot. Heroic, perhaps, but probably useless. Beyond that, I must confess to the imaginings, the temptations of my ego. Do I have the magic words to sway you? Probably not, but one hopes. I don't need to repeat the chapter and verse about the specifics of the war crimes, the violations of international law, the inadequacy of the prosecution as proving its case vis-a-vis the charges of disorderly conduct and trespass. There seems no doubt, though, about the profound and inexorable harm caused by the Hellfire bombs dropped by MQ-9 Reaper drones, and the many examples of treaties and laws that are supposed to be the law of the land that are violated on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. It occurs to me to ask, what's the relationship between the law and common sense? And one would hope that there is some connection, that they're not far removed from each other. And if we look at the common sense of the matter, taken out of the legalese, how is it okay for the United States to drop bombs on countries that we have not declared war against? That is the essence, that is the question. And is there really anything more that's needed to explain our outrage and our grief? I'm a pretty concrete kind of person. I find it easier to deal with examples than abstract notions sometimes. And one of the kinds of examples that works for me is the shoe on the other foot example. And I think about a scenario where, for example, the government of Mexico, feeling frustrated at the United States' inability to monitor the southern border in a way that the Mexican government feels is appropriate, and the Mexican government asks and asks again, and we make promises, and somehow or another the immigration violations occur, and the drug interdictions don't work, and whatever. And at some point, the Mexican government gets frustrated, and so decides to use some armed drones to make the point, to deal with some of the immigrant situation and the violations of the wall, etc. How can that not be okay? But it'd be okay for us to drop bombs in Afghanistan, and Pakistan, and Somalia, and Yemen, etc. Why is it okay for us and not okay for others? That to me is the common sense question. I was in New York City for several days this week, and Monday night I was sitting with a family member about 10 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden there was a huge noise, a series of loud noises, and we looked at each other, is this thunder, is there explosions, are bombs dropping? Well, it turned out to have a much more benign explanation. These were fireworks that was celebrating the beginning of Super Bowl week. So of course we were greatly relieved because the noise lasted for about 20 minutes. And I realized an ongoing frustration I have had here in the court is our inability, I believe, to make real for you and for the prosecutor what life is like living under drones. And I am trying to think, is there a way that I can do this in my testimony? Would you let me bring the tape recorder and just have loud, thunderous explosions for half an hour? And of course the answer is no. The other thing that happens with those noises, and this happened to me Monday night, is not knowing what was going on. I didn't know whether I should be frightened. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. In the places where the drones fly, not only is that noise, which prevents sleeping, prevents eating, prevents school, people live in continual anxiety and fear. Will the next bomb drop here? Will my children become orphans? Will the house disappear? It's so hard for us to imagine living in that heightened state of fear and uncertainty. And so my frustration was, we could not bring that here to you, for you to begin to taste that a little bit. Sooner or later, somewhere in some town court, a judge will accept the throw of the dice, accept the vagaries of fate that puts the damn base in your borders and not the town of Salina. We continue to hope that that town court will be here, and that town judge will be you. To this point, I want to read a very brief excerpt of a statement from Guido Calabresi, a senior Court of Appeals judge now and former dean of the Yale School of Law. He was writing about Ronald Dworkin, who recently died, considered the leading legal philosopher of his generation. A tiny excerpt. After completing legal studies at Harvard, clerking for Learned Hand, and briefly practicing law, he went to Yale Law School in '62, contemporaneously with Robert Bork, with whom he occasionally co-taught dazzlingly. In 1969, when he succeeded H.L.A. Hart as professor of jurisprudence at Oxford, this is the point I wanted to make, Dworkin was already a world-class scholar whose concept that law had to be based as much on fundamental moral principles as on formal rules became a hallmark. I add my thanks to those of Mr. Canaan and others for your patience and fairness and attentiveness to our rights in this court as pro se defendants. While it has no impact on the court's deliberations for this trial, we want to note for the record that it was the events of October 25th, 2012 that began the shameful issuance of orders of protection, a practice that both trivializes essential protections offered by the law to vulnerable at-risk persons, and at the same time makes a mockery of the constitutional protections of the First Amendment. I'm saddened by your participation in this invidious subversion of the law's intent, and hope that future legal processes will preclude the issuing of such orders in these circumstances. Thank you.